Hey, everybody, welcome to Help Solve the Case. Thank you for being here. Today, we have just a very quick update about the Hernandez case, the victim, Etan Patz, and the Supreme Court reinstates a New York City murder conviction. And you're like, oh my goodness, what the heck? And that's what I thought when I read it, because they are the ones usually giving the relief. So I thought we could talk about it. Before we get into it, I want to thank you for being here. Hopefully you love the law and the court process and the criminal justice system as much as I do. I thank you for being here. And if you do, I really would appreciate a like, a subscribe, and a share as we're trying to grow this channel. Thank you so much for all your time spent. I posted an award today. We got an award today. All your time watching, listening to me, and I want to give you more of what you want. So thank you very much. So today we're looking at this Newsweek article. I saw it came out just fresh today and just a couple hours ago. And it's a shocking title. It's the Supreme Court reinstating a murder conviction. Now, how often have you heard that? I don't think that I've heard this before, and I'm not familiar with this case. So we're just going to go through this Newsweek article here. So it says the Supreme Court today reinstated the murder conviction of Pedro Hernandez for the 1979 killing of 6-year-old Etan Patz, siding with the New York prosecutors in a closely watched case that's gripped the city for decades. Okay, this is a very old case. In a 6-3 decision, the justices reversed a federal appeals court ruling that had thrown out the conviction and potentially set the stage for a third trial. Imagine winning, having your conviction overturned, and then having this happen. Again, like I said, I would not think that this was possible, right? It says the unsigned opinion, I looked for it, I couldn't find it, marked a significant victory for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, whose office had argued that the lower court improperly disregarded the outcome of Hernandez's 2017 retrial. So it sounds like this has been back and forth through the courts for a long time. It says that conviction followed a lengthy 5-month proceeding featuring dozens of witnesses and extensive testimony about Hernandez's confession. So potentially he got convicted on the 27 retrial, and the appeals court overturned that. I'm not exactly sure. As I mentioned, I'm not familiar with this case. Bragg had criticized the appeals court ruling as resting on a, quote, a slender reed, end quote, a characterization the Supreme Court appeared to embrace in restoring the verdict. The Manhattan DA said in a press release today, quote, today the Supreme Court agreed with the findings of multiple lower courts and upheld the trial conviction of Pedro Hernandez for the horrific murder of Etan Patz. We stand by this important conviction, end quote. At the center of this legal fight was a question about the limits of federal court review of state convictions. Now that's like, what? Okay, and we're going to talk about that. The Supreme Court said the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit overstepped its authority under a 1996 federal law designed to restrict federal habeas review of state criminal cases. So let me just read this and then I'll give you why I'm kind of freaking out here. Quote, the Second Circuit exceeded its authority in holding that Hernandez is entitled to relief, end quote, the Supreme Court wrote, emphasizing that federal courts are not free to second-guess state court judgments simply because they may disagree with the outcome. So, again, not sure what happened here, but it sounds like in 1996, they codified or simplified or enacted federal legislation to further restrict federal habeas review of state criminal cases. So what does that mean if you're a defendant? they're restricting your rights to appeal to the higher court. Now, if you're a due process fan, doesn't that mean that they're taking a right away from you? Because what if the lower court got it wrong, right? Okay. And then for the prosecution are probably like, we waste so much time on appeal after appeal after appeal after appeal. You got to do something. Okay. So we can understand both sides of it. Here on the channel, we're not on one side or the other. We're just trying to understand better how it works. Okay. So what it seems to be saying here that the Supreme Court said, which is in quotes, again, this is from Newsweek, they cannot second guess the state court just because they may disagree with the outcome. So I don't know what the jurisdiction or whatever, how it got to the Supreme Court, what, there had to be something, or how it got to the U.S. Court of Appeals. There had to be something there, or did they just decide to review it? We're not sure. Oh, let's see. Maybe here's an answer. The Second Circuit had previously overturned Hernandez's conviction based on how the trial judge responded to a jury question during deliberations. Now, we've seen a lot of jury references with the Murdaugh trial, right? How things involving the jury, because they're the trier of fact, can mess with the case, right? And we've talked about different things. Did this happening or that happening, even if it's not a direct jury question or jury involvement, could this over here impact how the jury viewed the case and ultimately made their decision? Okay. So jurors asked whether they were required to disregard Hernandez's later confessions if they found his initial pre-Miranda statement involuntary. Okay, so what they're saying there is what it sounds like. Apparently, there was a pre-Miranda statement. And at some point, it sounds like that was determined to be involuntary. We don't know what happened with it. So it sounds like that might have gotten thrown out, or they weren't sure if they were supposed to throw it out. Oh, let me back up. No, it sounds like the pre-Miranda statement was determined to be involuntary, or they were deciding if it was involuntary. It's very confusing, this language. So if it was involuntary, would any later confessions also fall under the same scope? It says the judge answered briefly that the jurors did not have to do so. The appellate panel found that the response was insufficient and potentially misleading, concluding it warranted vacating the verdict. So maybe the appeals court wanted a little more, well, you can do this, but you don't have to do that. And this one has nothing to do with that one. We're not sure. We would have to look at the language. The Supreme Court, however, rejected that reasoning, effectively reinstating Hernandez's sentence of 25 years to life in prison. The court's three liberal justices, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, dissented, though they did not provide a written explanation for their position. So who is Pedro Hernandez? He is 64. It says here he confessed in 2012 to abducting and killing Patz, a case that became one of the most infamous missing child investigations in U.S. history. I don't know about it. Do you know about it? His attorneys have long argued that the confession was unreliable, contending it was the product of mental illness and hours of questioning before police advised him of his rights. Now, where have we heard confessions and mental illness? We've heard that in Richard Allen case, right? Those are allegations made in the Richard Allen case. Hernandez is, and going back to custody, somebody has to be a sound mind. And then what determines sound mind, right? And then Miranda has to be in place, whether you're in custody and you're being asked questions, right? So I don't know. That would be very interesting. Maybe that's why he got the retrial. We don't know. Oh, they're going to tell us. I should read ahead before I opine, before I question. Hernandez's first trial ended in a mistrial in 2015. And this happened when? Was that 79? Did they not catch anybody until then? Wow, that's crazy. Right? His first trial ended in a mistrial in 2015. Maybe he was found incompetent. I'm not sure. A second jury convicted him in 2017. That's a long time to wait for justice, huh? With Monday's ruling, the Supreme Court has effectively ended years of legal uncertainty, allowing that conviction to stand and eliminating the need for a third trial. Hernandez's lawyers said they were terribly disappointed by the ruling. Quote, "We firmly believe that an innocent man is in jail for a crime that he did not commit," end quote. Attorneys Harvey Fishbein and Alan Fontier told reporters. Here's Etan. So who is Etan? He disappeared on May 25th, my birthday, 1979. That's not my birthday. I mean, the year. While walking to his school bus stop in Lower Manhattan. His case drew national attention and helped lead to widespread changes in how missing children cases are handled, including the use of milk carton photos and the establishment of the National Missing Children's Day. And I remember, if you don't know, man, we used to have those milk carton photos. The 6-year-old was last seen in Soho after leaving his family's apartment for the short walk to a nearby bus stop, a routine his parents had allowed him to do alone for the first time. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine as a parent? Was somebody lying in wait and watching? Like, oh, that's got to be heart. The whole thing is heartbreaking, but that when he never returned home, an intensive and highly publicized search began, but his body was never found. The case remained unsolved for decades and became one of the most enduring missing child investigations in U.S. history. It was not until 2012 that Hernandez, a former bodega clerk who worked near the route Patz took, was identified as a suspect. That would be interesting. And later confessed to the killing, setting in motion a series of trials that continue to draw national attention. Are you aware of this case? I was not aware of this case. Quote, "The U.S. Supreme Court's decision in the Etan Patz case marks the end of a long legal chapter in one of the most significant missing child cases in our nation's history," end quote, John Bischoff, vice president of the Missing Children Division at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, told Newsweek in an emailed statement, quote, "Today, we are thinking of Etan's family who spent nearly 5 decades seeking answers." I got chills. In ensuring that Etan was never forgotten. Their perseverance helped keep the focus on a little boy whose life had a lasting impact on child protection efforts around the country, end quote. And I guess this is his parents. So who are his parents? Where are they now? Stanley and Julie Potts, a New York City couple who were thrust into the national spotlight after their 6-year-old son vanished in 1979. Stanley worked as a professional photographer while Julie ran a home-based daycare out of their Soho loft, a setting that became central to both the search for Etan and the early public attention the case received. Their son's disappearance and Stanley's widely circulated photographs of him helped make Etan one of the first missing children whose image was shared nationwide, bringing unprecedented awareness to such cases. So maybe photographs weren't standard back then. Despite the intense public focus early on, the couple gradually stepped back from the spotlight in later years, making only limited appearances tied to major developments in the case. Today, the family's story remains closely tied to Etan's legacy. After living for decades in the same Soho apartment where he disappeared, the couple eventually moved to Hawaii to be closer to family after years of waiting for answers. While they have largely stayed out of public view in recent years, their decades-long advocacy and perseverance continue to shape how missing children cases are handled in the United States. And it says this article includes reporting by the Associated Press. Did they ever find him? Did they ever find him? Wow. So much. So much, right? We never know. We never know what thing in our life or in someone else's life, the ripple effect or the thing that's going to happen to take effect for all of this. Horrible story. Horrible story. And I guess this is the end, right? This is the end. I hope they found his body. I don't know. Maybe that's why they were staying in that house. Very sad, but very empowering at the same time. Sometimes we have to think that bad things happen and end up, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a good purpose, but do you guys know what I'm trying to say? Like, I just think everything is a ripple effect, and something happens and something else happens, and just a rough time. Just a rough time. If you guys know anything about this or anything, please feel free to comment below. I really would appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you on the next video. Say a prayer for her parents, his parents, sorry. And I hope that he was able to be put to rest properly and everybody's questions are answered. Let's pray for all of our missing people, our unfound children, and people that are in the midst of bad circumstances.